We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we're out of new content, meaning there's nothing coming out right now, which is one of the few lulls that we have in the entire calendar year. So we've decided to take a little bit of time and talk about some of the news that's coming out about the MCU and all of the developments that have happened in the last week or so, maybe week and a half, beyond just what we typically cover in Sister Scoop, because there's a lot of changes going on, and it feels like the right time to take a beat, talk about it in a little bit more depth than the quick, rapid hit stuff that we're doing weekly on Sister Scoop. So, because there are three big topics that we want to talk about today, and we want to give them each enough time to really talk about them in depth, I'm going to kick it off to Katie, and she is going to get us started with the first one.
Yeah, let's just get right into, I think, the biggest of the news, in my opinion, which is Doomsday is delayed to December of 2026. Now, I don't really think, if you've been hanging around in Marvel, or specifically the MCU lately, I don't really think you should be that shocked by this news. I know I was not entirely that blown away by it. I was like, yeah, it sucks, but kind of makes sense, because if we're being honest, this movie literally just started filming and it's supposed to be coming out in a year. It wasn't adding up.
Yeah, it was a very odd situation. I mean, we had a special episode where we covered the entire chair reveal situation and all of that shenanigans, which was super fun. But I think at the back of my mind, I know you probably felt the same way. I don't remember if we talked about it at the time. It felt incredibly late to be announcing a cast and saying, hey, we're in production now for a movie that was coming out at that point, 14 months later?
Correct.
Like, that was crazy. And so I think anybody who has any sense of film, whether you're a fan or you work in film, was kind of like, wait a minute, that's like a really expedited timeline. And then you think about kind of the slap on the wrist that Marvel has gotten from the fans and the feedback on the rushed jobs that they've been doing. And you're like, great, so you're going to take what is possibly your biggest crossover of all time until Secret Wars, and you're going to rush that? That seems like a bad idea. So, to exactly what you were saying, even though I'm like, dang, that really is annoying that now we have to wait another, almost 7 months, we're going to get a better film. And I think it makes a lot more sense when you think about the one other film that comes out next year and what that could mean for the character Spider-Man, who would not have likely been in Doomsday because of the release order that they had.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things you said there, so I want to get to all of them. First and foremost, to your point about the chairs, one of the things too was everybody was like, where's the other half of them?
Yeah.
I mean, we all called it. I mean, we talked about it when we were on our episode. We said, hey, we're missing, Brie Larson. We're missing Mark Ruffalo. We're missing some big names that we still expect to see in this movie who are still relevant heroes that are still on our rosters. And with some of the news about who's going to be on the Avengers team coming out as of the day we're recording this, both of those names are supposedly on Sam Wilson's Avengers roster. So that being said, obviously that was not the full cast. We all pretty much assumed that. But when are you going to reveal the second half of the cast when supposedly we're filming? That's not what. So there was a lot of that. And I'm glad you also brought up Spider-Man because I think he was such a glaring missing person. And everybody said that too. You know, where is Spider-Man? And obviously the last time we saw him truly was No Way Home. It's been almost 3.5 years.
No.
Yeah.
No. I'm going to stop you right there.
I know. I'm sorry. But it's true. I mean, and by the time this movie comes out, it will have been 5 years since we saw No Way Home.
No.
Sorry.
I'm so annoyed by that. It really stresses me out.
Listen, don't shoot the messenger. But it's true. I mean, that's a fact. And so I think to kind of take that step back and realize he was supposed to be in a weird spot in this lineup. He was supposed to be the Captain Marvel, essentially, of these phases, that weird in-between movie while everybody's like, what the heck did you just do? And now you just want us to calmly watch this movie? And I also think there was so much conversation about, oh, this is now going to be multiversal again. And we've been going back and forth 17 times. And I think since this being said, I think this movie is going right back to being ground level. I think they have to, because we don't have Doomsday to go in front of it anymore. For it to help bridge a gap between two movies, it's going to be behind it. And unless they push it, which we have not gotten word that is going to happen yet, they have to completely redo this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then I think, if you bring in the other big piece of, or the other rumor, I should say, it hasn't been confirmed, around Spider-Man 4 this week, which is the Punisher is going to potentially be in that film. Katie, you said it in our Sister Scoop episode. Like, you're not going to have the Punisher in this crazy multiversal focused film. You're just not. That's an indicator that Peter Parker is going to be ground level. In my head, honestly, could be dealing with Mayor Fisk still. I think that is a really compelling storyline. I don't know how they're going to have Mayor Fisk running amok without Spider-Man being one of his antagonist, not the antagonist. I think that opens up a lot of correction ability for some really messy stuff that was going on with the slate. They were putting movies in orders that did not make sense for longer term character arcs. And I think finally they are getting back to, let's be intentional about the order in which we release things. Let's be intentional about the stories that we're telling and not running around like chickens with their heads cut off and saying, we have to push out this film. We have to do this. We have to make it all work. We have to shoehorn it in, because that's what we've been dealing with for the last 3-4 years. And it just hasn't been as good of content. I mean, we talk about it all the time. The difference between the Infinity Saga and the Multiverse Saga, if you're going to put it down to one word, it's intentionality. And they haven't been intentional with their storytelling. So if this delay is an indicator that they are doing that again and they are moving things around to make it make sense, I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm really not. And that's kind of when we first went into this topic of being like, one, you shouldn't be shocked. And two, if you're mad about it, to me, you're asking for the downfall.
Yeah.
Because there's not a reason to be mad. I'm a little upset because did I want to see it in May? Yeah.
Yeah.
Duh. I'm also a little annoyed because I love the holiday season, guys. I really don't want to be spending most of my time covering Doomsday, but that's what we'll be doing.
Yeah.
That's what we will now spend our time doing. And that's, you know what? That's fine. It is what it is. But regardless, I want them to put the best content out there.
Yes.
And for a movie that literally only just began filming, like, what, a month ago? I was never under the impression that I was going to make a May 2026 due date.
No.
Like, I'm not delusional.
No, it never made sense, the production timeline. And then you think about the scale, right? And I'm not just talking the cast. Yes, the cast is wild. I mean, we're seeing all the behind the scenes footage, not even footage, all the behind the scenes photos of them just like hanging out in restaurants and like golfing together. It literally looks like, honestly, the best place to be on earth right now, wherever that cast is hanging out. And I have major FOMO, not because I deserve to be there, but just because I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Yes.
But at the same time, beyond even the cast, from a scale perspective, you have to think about the post-production pieces, right? There's going to be editing that has to tell a coherent story, and then there's going to have to be scheduling around the inevitable reshoots. There's going to have to be a crap ton of VFX, right? You're telling a story with Doctor Doom, a million different heroes. For every cast member you bring on, you're going to have some VFX. I mean, you can have the most grounded person in the world. You can bring in the Punisher. He still requires a certain level of VFX, right? Like, not all of that is going to be done practically. So, for every interesting character, add X amount of hours of VFX work, right? And there was no way they were going to finish filming this and have enough time for all of that to be quality and give those artists enough time to not have to work like 18-hour days. So there's just a lot of elements to this that are not just the, oh, they're just filming it now, but it's all of the other pieces. It's all of the things that they
Exactly.
don't know that they're going to have to do after they finish initial shooting.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what my main point was when I was like a year. Like, I'm not delusional because you do have to add all this stuff in. We might be able to do practical effects with some of these characters, but we're talking about Doctor Doom here.
Doctor Strange.
Well, right. I mean, obviously there's a
Although
whole
he
list,
wasn't
but
one of the chairs, actually.
right. But we obviously also know there's like a whole half of them missing.
Yeah.
Regardless, I'm just pulling out Doom because he's literally the antagonist of this film.
Yeah.
And you're going to sit there and try and tell me, hey, we're going to be able to do all the VFX in the time that we need to. No, you're not.
I mean, you have the X-Men. They're like walking VFX machines.
Yeah, like honestly, the only one to me that actually isn't the worst is probably Wolverine. And
Was he even
he's
on the
not.
list?
No,
Yeah.
not as of now.
Yeah.
But that's my point. Like he could maybe get away with doing more like real time effects, but like
Yeah.
yeah. I do think again, I'm not shocked. I'm a little disappointed, but I think it allows them to put out the better content. And I mean, I'm waiting for a second chair reveal still. Like there's still a second half of this cast that I expect to see. And I am kind of intrigued to know who is filming and who we haven't gotten confirmation that is even going to be in the movie yet.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to what you just said, right? It's the second chair reveal because they're going to have to tell us a certain set of people, right? But then there's the secrets, right? So it's like I'm expecting in my head this is how it's going to roll out. I have no insider knowledge. So this is a disclaimer. This is just like me manifesting for a second here. So there's a smaller chair reveal, right? Your Doctor Stranges, your Spider-Mans, your Hulks, your Captain Marvels, the people that you're like, all right, we assume they're going to be in this film because it would be weird if they were not.
Right.
But then you have a whole subset of people who, for one reason or another, are not, and I'm using air quotes here that you guys can't see, are not available for this film, right? You're Wanda, who is supposedly dead, but should be in this film. Characters like that. Or you're Wolverine, who, yes, may be a little expected, but still it's like he has so many iterations now, so that's a little confusing. So there are so many. Jean Grey is another one. Like, is she going to be a surprise edition because is she technically dead from that version? Yes, right? I think.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
If
yes,
that's
the
it,
last
yes. So,
stand.
honestly, these are the types of movies that I have to watch at least once a year because I
Right.
don't remember what has happened. And yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, like those types of characters, especially the ones who are, and I quote, dead, who should be in the film, are probably not dead, will be a surprise. There are going to be variants. I mean, look, is Chris Evans going to be in this film? I am willing to bet money that he is. Those kinds of cameos and surprises. Are we going to get past versions of other characters like the Fantastic Four? Very possible. Are we going to get the middle set of X-Men? Very possible. Like, those are the types of surprises that are not going to get chairs, but they still need to fit them in. I'm not saying they're all going to be in there, but whoever from that group ends up being elevated, Deadpool maybe, to being in the film, they're going to have to film too, and that's going to have to be a secret. So there's a lot of other things that are going on, and I don't want to say a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of ingredients for the soup. And the soup needs to, like, you're still marinating the beef over here. Like, there's just, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And I think the news of this is good in the long run.
Yeah. And then I think the final piece here, beyond just all of the elements that need to go into Doomsday to make it successful, which I think we've come to the conclusion is really the reason driving this delay, is of course, if you're going to delay the first movie, you're probably going to delay the second. So we also now know that they have bumped Secret Wars back to essentially literally 364 days later on December 17th. My editor brain is so sad because I don't want to be doing that over Christmas, but we will do it over Christmas anyway. So that is just the other big piece here, is that this shift then did adjust Secret Wars. And then, as Katie and I were just talking about offline together, we literally have no idea what's coming out after Secret Wars. No idea. And that gets into something that we'll talk about later. But after Secret Wars, it is literally a blank slate. So literally, I didn't even mean to say that, but like, it works. So here we go. Blank slate. Love it. Sure. Stressing me out.
Yeah, I just want to follow up to that before we move on to some of the other news with, 2 point, expected the second one to be moved, but to know that we, as of right now, do not have anything is terrifying.
Wild, and it's going to keep me up until they announce something.
Yes.
Yeah.
But speaking of announcements, that kind of leads us into one of our other big news things that has been coming out that revolves around Marvel in general, just kind of moving forward. And that's that they're not doing Hall H at SDCC this year, which, quite frankly, I couldn't tell you the last time they didn't. And for those of you who might not follow along quite as much, SDCC, when they do their Hall H announcements, those are usually your really big ones where, like, they'll have the cast come out and all that stuff. We literally get essentially the next, 4 years worth of news every year at these, or at specifically SDCC. So for them to not be doing Hall H means there's a good chance they will not be announcing much of anything during SDCC this year.
It is so bizarre to me. I mean, look, I understand that they are going through developmental and creative overhauls, right? We have covered it ad nauseum through Sister Scoops, through episodes, the just kind of disarray that the studio has been in with their very inconsistent performance at the box office over the last few phases. And frankly, the inconsistent inconsistent positivity in relation to the films. So there's a lot of conversation going on. There was an entire Wall Street Journal, I don't call it an expose, that sounds so ooh, but an entire Wall Street Journal expose talking about, this is what was happening to the studio in the early 2020s, and this is how things got to be this place. So yes, there is not they're doing a lot of internal work right now. It's they're going to therapy, and then they're going to come out and they're going to be in a much better headspace. And that's what I'm hoping for. But what's most bizarre, I think, is if you think about what happened last year at Hall H when they announced Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
Do we agree with that decision? No. But it was still a massive moment. Everybody was talking about it.
Yeah.
I was at a concert and I was still texting Caitlin about it.
I was literally blowing up her phone. I was like, dude, I'm not even kidding right now. They're announcing that RDJ is coming back as Dr. Doom. I don't know what's going on.
It was crazy. I was trying not to fall over at a concert because, those tiny little aisles. I was trying not to fall over and freaking out, trying to enjoy it, but also being why is Robert Downey Jr. coming back? But these are the types of things that they are announcing typically at Hall H. And then to Katie's point too, it's not just, oh my gosh, here's this crazy moment that's going to get them a ton of press and going to start all this conversation. It's also what shows are we going to see over the next few years? What movies? What's in development? Let's get a title. Let's fill in that slot. You can see Disney releases these lists of films, right? It's untitled Marvel film, and then they'll have, their other subsets, Star Wars, whatever. And that's typically where we understand what goes in what slot. And as a show who covers them, I'm terrified. I have no idea beyond the end of 2027, what is going to happen, what they're doing. And is it because they don't want to announce or give anything away about the next phase? Maybe. Is it because they're doing an entire overhaul? Maybe. The one thing I will say related to the phase piece is the last time we ended a phase, we had a planned pause from the studio that was then extrapolated by a pandemic. So it didn't seem weird that they weren't announcing things. But is it that next year they're going to announce the next phase? I don't know. I don't know. But it's freaking me out.
I think it's both options. I genuinely think it's a little bit of we have some work to do.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we're putting the right stuff out, which it's that stuff's funny to me. In the nicest of ways, I'm going to be a little critical here and say, didn't y'all say that 2 years ago? Like I don't mean to be rude, but like maybe do a little more this time to figure it out. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but like okay. But I also do think it's, hey, we don't want to ruin this. Because Infinity War and Endgame were huge. But we also knew there would be a phase 4 afterwards. We would have characters return. We would have more stories to tell. That's not saying I don't know. Like, I know there's going to be a phase 7. That's not like we've all heard the rumors. We've all even had Kevin Feige himself talk about, hey, the mutants are coming. Like we have like a 10-year plan for the mutants. So like it's happening. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to sit there and be like, hey, I'm really concerned nothing's happening behind the scenes and we might go dry for who knows how long. I'm not worried in that capacity because we've had the conversations.
Yeah.
I genuinely think a big part of it is we are essentially, to my perception of this, soft rebooting the MCU.
Yeah.
And I think to sit there this year and announce a bunch of stuff when we're not even watching Doomsday yet, and we won't watch it for now another year, just ruins it. And I think there's a lot of times that, like, politely, things have been overshared within the past 3 phases where you're like, well, okay, cool, but now I'm not as excited because you told me all this information already when you could have made it more of a surprise. So I think really it's kind of keeping that and letting them keep their cards close. I think knowing them, they have a slate.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
But like genuinely it's put together. They know what they're doing. They have the plan. And I would not be shocked if we don't even hear anything next year because by next year we still haven't watched Doomsday. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they're not going to hold back, if anything, by not announcing anything until at least between Doomsday and Secret Wars. If not, slam us with a slate right after Secret Wars.
I don't know how you go two things to that. I don't know how you go 2 years without a major announcement at SDCC. I think that's not great. I think it shows a lack of momentum.
I mean, I don't think that it means that they're not going to be announcing things. You could be announcing your mutant cast. That doesn't mean we know.
That was going to be my second point. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying we have to have a slate reveal in 2026. My planner brain would like a slate reveal because I would like to know what I'm covering in beyond 2027. But I'm saying from an overall perspective, they should be coming back with at least something to get people talking. I do think that next year they have to come back with an X-Men cast. I think they've had the rights. At that point, it will have been for almost 7 years, and they haven't really done much with them except bring back the OG cast and put Wolverine in literally everything. And the animated series, which is honestly like the best.
Top tier.
I mean, yes. But like from a live action perspective, it's literally been Wolverine and our guy Professor X and then the OGs in the MCU.
Well, and Deadpool and Gambit. Like, we've had X-Men.
Right. I mean, like, yes, you're right. You're right. But they
Yeah, I was
haven't
like, just put a period on the end of that sentence, girl.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is like these are all characters that existed before. They have not yet put their own spin on the X-Men when they've had the rights to them for years. And all they've been doing is like bringing back the versions that have already existed. I don't think that's a bad thing because they've done it really well. But for them to have sat on the rights to these characters for this long and not have done something with them, and then think about like when are their moments to announce these casts? It's D23s, which is in this year's 2025. It's every other year, so there's not a D23 next year. That means 2026 SDCC is the moment. We know they're starting to think about directors for the X-Men film, which means they're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of casting once that is done. And I think that it would be a real miss for them to not come back to SDCC with a bang next year. If they're not able to give us a slate, fine, but they need to be able to announce the X-Men.
Well, or there's pieces of a slate that we know about. I mean, they said they want to do Daredevil every year, like a regular television show. Okay. That could last 8 seasons for all we know, which
Yeah.
means that puts us well into what, like 2030 something? Like, with that kind of stuff, you can fill in. I mean, we know X-Men 97, they're going to continue. It was greenlit at least for a 3rd season. And that, if that doesn't come out the year after season 2, which should be coming out next year.
I was going to ask, do we even have timing on that? Because it's been
I
done.
believe it's next year, but I don't believe I know the exact timing of it. Regardless, say it doesn't come out the year after and it does take another 2 years, which, whatever, fine. Like in the 90s, they were able to put them out more consistently, but like whatever.
Season 2 has been done for over a year. They've literally just been sitting on it. Like, I don't understand.
I know. I know. Oh, listen, nobody's more aware of where we left season 1 than your girl right here. So,
I know.
But, that being said, that puts us what? If next year is going to be a year 2028 for another X-Men 97 season 3. So we do know there are going to be things that are coming out based on what they're saying. I do think those might be things they can make announcements about. And they're going to feed us something. I'm not shocked it's not happening this year though, because they're keeping their cards close to their chest. And also when you just push back your 2 big movies and now the second one's not coming out till 2028,
2027.
Right? 2027. Sorry, all the pushback.
Almost
and because
2028.
Yeah, because it's December, so it's throwing. Yeah, it's throwing me off. But like, it's not coming out until 2027 at the end of it, and that's if we don't get any more delays. So I'm not shocked that they're skipping this year.
Yeah. I mean, and look, and the one thing I do want to clarify, they're skipping a Hall H presentation. That's the big stuff, the glitz, the glamour, the ones that everybody talks about afterwards. They're still going to be, doing other things with other areas of the company. I'm sure gaming's going to be doing stuff. I'm sure comics will be doing stuff. They're still going to be there promoting the Fantastic Four, which will be coming out I think that same weekend. So there's going to be a Marvel presence. It's just not going to be the big banner type announcements that we have come to expect from them when it comes to SDCC.
Yeah, I think, like I said to begin this kind of coverage, when you have made it partially your personality to be giving your big announcements during these, I mean, they're not the only ones. DC does the same thing.
Yeah.
To not be doing it is a big deal.
It is. It's huge news. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting. But that being said, we were kind of talking about the shows, and I think that's the next thing. There's been, like I said, guys, there's been a lot of just housekeeping. That's the word. There's been a lot of housekeeping.
Yeah.
And the next matter of business was that they're apparently, 1, putting the brakes on shows just in general, and 2, which I'm going to be honest, I really hate this news and I'm pretty not happy about it. Supposedly they will not be focusing on some of their major characters anymore in shows. And it will be now to tell kind of smaller character stories. To me, as soon as I heard that news, I said, might as well shoot yourself in the foot, because the only reason people watched half the shows they did was because you had people like the Scarlet Witch in them. You had your Captain America and your Winter Soldier. You had Loki. You had... that's actually
Nick Fury.
Just the first. Yeah, but did anybody really want to watch Secret Invasion?
We did want to watch it. We did not want to keep watching it.
That's true. We did in fact want to turn it off. But I mean, you had Nick Fury. You're correct. You had Nick Fury. You had other big characters. I mean, we have Vision Quest still coming up. We have Daredevil. Like, there's been so many shows that come out. I'm like even blanking on half of them. You introduced so many characters that hopefully are going to be bigger. We had Hawkeye happen. Again, I'm just naming all of 2021 right now because apparently those are the only ones that I'm fully remembering. But yeah, I was thinking about Moon Knight, but I didn't want to bring him up because nobody knows what he's doing. But you had all this come out, and half the reason people hyped it up the way they did, and half the reason people still have continued to watch, like, nobody would have watched Agatha if they hadn't watched WandaVision. And you know why WandaVision worked? Because it was about the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is such a weird take to me to try and be utilizing your shows for, I don't want to say lesser characters, but that's kind of essentially the vibe, because they've actually really helped fill in blanks, especially with the bigger characters. I mean, you suited up your next Captain America in a TV show. Do I agree with that? No.
No.
But
poor choice.
You did. Like
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah.
You made Wanda the Scarlet Witch in her TV show. You
Poor
made Loki
choice.
you made Loki the god of time in a TV show.
Poor choice.
Yeah, none of these were like my favorite thing. They all should have been films in my opinion because these are huge moments, especially I'm impartial, but especially Scarlet Witch, like what? But whatever. We all know where that went. But still, like I just this really aggravates me.
I disagree.
Really.
Yeah. And here's why. I think what you were saying at the end, when you were listing out those major moments, I think there's a few things, but it starts with those major moments. Those were movie moments. They were theatrical moments.
Yes.
They were moments that we should have seen on the big screen. And I think if Marvel has been unable to tell the difference between what can be done in a television show and what should be done on the big screen, then they need to have hard and fast rules for what happens in a television show versus what happens on the big screen. You shouldn't be giving people new mantles, which they've done twice now, at least off the top of my head. What was the
I just named 3.
Loki is kind of weird because it's like, let me put it this way. 2 very famous mantles. God of Stories is like, yes, it's a new mantle, but it's not like everybody was like, oh my gosh, the God of Stories, like that's something I am super familiar with. Everybody knows Captain America and everybody knows the Scarlet Witch. So for characters to step into 2 very prominent, very famous mantles in television shows is a problem. I'm sorry, it just is. They need to be bigger moments. So that's one piece. I think the other piece, and we've talked about this a lot, and I know this is one of the reasons that the studio gave for wanting to tell these stories differently or in a different medium, or I should say, divide and conquer a little bit differently, is they're running into this issue where they have literally put up such a high barrier to entry to new fans or anyone who has fallen behind. And if you're going to have major moments in the MCU, a new Captain America, the crowning of a Scarlet Witch, an entire multiversal story that nobody really understands where it belongs, that's the other piece, but we'll get to that. Told in shows that half the people aren't watching, that then will impact the wider universe. It's like you have to do all this extra homework. And it's, for us, it's easy. We're doing it already. But for the average fan, that's a lot of work. They have to have a Disney Plus subscription. So now you're forcing people to get another subscription for something that they may not even really care that much about. So I do understand that argument. But then again, they've also had this issue where they're having trouble understanding how to take storylines from the shows and actually make them impact the movies. They're going one way. We're seeing how the movies are impacting the shows, but we're not seeing them go the other way. Loki's a perfect example. So if you're not going to tell stories that are going to impact the wider universe, you might as well just can it and say, all right, then they're just going to be smaller stories.
Okay, I have a couple things. First, before I forget this, I would argue that last bit's not entirely true. Primarily because we've seen the follow-ups of some of these in movies. Like we've watched the shows impact the movies already in many different places. So I actually would say that's entirely incorrect. I think the movies sometimes don't impact the shows anymore.
Interesting.
Because I think it did at first. Like you see somebody like Yelena showed up in Hawkeye. When's the last time we had a show? And I'm genuinely asking, when is the last time we had a show that was impacted from a movie? Like the movie came first and the show came after.
Let me go through the catalog of shows in my head. Hold one moment. The movie came first and the show came after.
Because I can name like 5 right off the top of my head of shows that fed into movies.
Like what?
Dude, are you crazy? WandaVision, MOM, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Captain America, and Thunderbolts.
Oh, true.
Loki hasn't fed into anything yet. That's
happening.
That's going to happen. He's going to appear in Doomsday. We've been confirmed. Hawkeye, Kate Bishop showed up in the end of the Marvels. The Marvels, Kamala, guess what? She had a whole show. We wouldn't have known who she was if we didn't have a show about her. Monica came from WandaVision.
All right, you have debunked that last piece. I was getting very fixated on the Loki of it all because that is like such a. You're right. That is coming. I hear you.
You need to not though, because we will digress too far if you
no,
get focused
I know.
on Loki.
It's just like that is such a big thing for them to have done for it to have lived in a silo. And so it kind of, to me, it's like blinders. I'm like, you can't have impacted the movies when you had that and it didn't impact the movies yet. To your point, I hear you.
Okay, here's what I will say about that, though. That's kind of the rest of what you said. I don't necessarily disagree. I do think that barrier to entry is high, but I don't even think it's just the shows. I think, quite frankly, I'm going to be honest, I'm happy I joined the MCU in 2014 because I couldn't imagine trying to do it now.
Yeah.
Take the shows out of the equation, you still have, God, I don't even know how many movies.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot. And I have not had to do a rewatch, and I probably will for Doomsday, but I have not done a full rewatch, I don't think, since Infinity War. Like, fully, like, back,
Yeah.
and I don't want to.
I don't
But
either.
I
That's
will.
like 80 million. Like, that's going to take you 4 months.
No, like, I remember when somebody put out the timing to watch them in front of Infinity War, and it took, like, if you watched one a week, and it took, like, what? Like, 20 weeks, if that? Like, I don't even think it took that long. And now I'm like, it could take me, like, a year
Yeah.
if I only watched one thing a day, or, like, one thing a week.
You're going to have to do 2 to 3 a week just so that they're still fresh even when the movie comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now let's be real. Is some of it as important anymore? I don't know. Like, is the OG caps, like, are they as important at this point? I'm not sure. Like, I do think your phase 4, 5, and 6 content is going to be priority over rewatching your phases 1 through 3.
Yeah.
So I do agree, while the barrier of entry is high, I think it's high regardless.
Yeah.
I think that's unfortunately just when you have a connected universe like this, that's kind of just what it's going to be. I do think there were, and you make great points, a lot of those moments that did happen, especially in the first roughly four projects that came out as a TV show, should have been movies. They should have been. I agree. They weren't. That they were also the first Disney Plus shows that came out. I can give them some leeway. I don't think every show's been a banger. I don't think every show's flopped.
Agreed.
And I think, I would have to say, past that first year, I do think they understood that some of these moments don't belong in movies. I would argue that I don't think that holds true throughout. Like, I do think they learned a little bit, because I don't feel like, off the top of my head, I'm not pulling anything from the past 3-4 years that I can be like, past 2021, do I feel like this should have made its own film? Secret Invasion's the only one I can think of, but that is its own, like, I don't even want to talk about that because that was just its own flop in itself.
I mean, that should have been what Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to be, like, at that level.
Right. And that's why, like, I don't even want to talk about it, because I think that was just such a fumble no matter what.
I will say, though, I think one moment that is very recent that should have been a film is what happened in Daredevil. You had a major villain take over control of an entire city. Not just an entire city, but a city that has been repeatedly the center of Avengers and MCU action.
Yes, I don't necessarily disagree, but also we don't know that's not going to bleed into a film with Spider-Man coming up. We don't know that knowledge. And also, to be fair, I understood why they made it a show. Daredevil has not done the whole movie thing yet. I mean, obviously he was in No Way Home as, like, a cameo, but, like, they have not made that leap with Daredevil. This was his first entrance fully into the MCU with his own show, and the only thing he's had so far is a show. He's the one who tells the Kingpin storyline. Kingpin has yet to appear. I mean, obviously, outside of shows, he was in Hawkeye, I know that. He was in Echo, I know that. But I mean, like, he hasn't appeared in the movies either.
I actually think there's a rights issue with him in film. I feel like D'Onofrio said that.
Oh, well, regardless of whatever, he hasn't. And so I think, that being said, you had to bridge a gap and it had to be a show. That's not to say Spider-Man 4 couldn't end up being about it. It could be. So it could still happen. But I do think they've learned from that. I see your points, though. I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of them, but I also think, on the flip side of it, to be a little obnoxious, as a fan who is watching your content, I sat there and, like I said, my initial reaction was like, really? Because, like, I don't really want to watch a show that's about, like, some random superhero. I really don't. Like, I'm sure there's value to it eventually, but, like, what got me into watching these shows and made me really get into them was your first 4 were all about characters I already cared about. And then even as you were introducing new characters, they were really cool, and you knew they were going to make an impact later on somewhere. If you're going to tell these smaller stories, it's like, and if they're not going to be as connected, I don't know. Like, that frustrates me a little bit. Then it's like, well, then maybe just don't tell them.
I don't know. I think for me, what is giving me hope that this could actually be really the right move for them long term is Daredevil. And I think if you think of that as the model, they're not considering him. I think what they're saying is like when you're talking like, and I quote, bigger names, they're saying like the people who started out in the films, right? Your Bucky's, your Sam's, your Wanda's, your Loki's, all those folks who are like, they were introduced in blockbusters. Now you have characters who have been introduced in these shows. Some have made the leap, some haven't. You have people like Daredevil who you can tell really compelling stories with. They're interesting characters. Then they might make the leap. They might have people, from the movies make cameos. They said that's definitely still a possibility. But I don't think that just because you're not getting some of these like big billboard names like the Thors of the world in these shows that they're not going to be interesting. I think there's so many characters in the roster when you look at the comics that you can still tell stories about that are going to be connected. It's just not necessarily going to be one of those things where it's like what we were seeing with maybe a Ms. Marvel. Like this is how I'm envisioning it. Is like it's not like the entire purpose of her show was to set her up for the Marvels, which worked in my opinion. But like that's not going to be the purpose anymore. It's going to be more like the Daredevil model of like we're just going to follow, I don't know, I'm going to try to think of someone randomly off Sunspot, which is a bad example because he's an X-Man, but he's the only person I could think of at the moment.
That was really random.
I know, it's so random.
Out of all the X-Men, like you were like Sunspot.
I know, like let me pick someone who's like not in like a ton of rosters all the time, but like whatever. Let's say like they decide to go all in on Sunspot and he gets his own show. Maybe he bumps up into an X-Men film. Occasionally we get to see other X-Men pop in. Maybe we see a Jubilee, pop in every once in a while. Maybe she's a little bit of a recurring character. Like you can still tell interesting stories with him. It just doesn't need to be that the sole purpose of his show is to set him up for the next X-Men film,
Yeah, like I said, I see your points. I'm not against them. I think we'll have to see how they actually shake out because I don't really trust them.
They've lost a little bit of credibility for sure.
Yeah, and I mean even with what we have had put out there, like it's hard to keep up. It really is. It's hard, and I don't mean because of the whole barrier of entry thing. I mean it's hard to keep up with like we could have one banger and then the next one's like literally in the toilet. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And it's been really hard for them to tell a full, cohesively good story too. So maybe that's why from the jump I was like, I'm going to be cynical of this because.
Which is fair because we've been burned like more than once.
Yeah, correct.
Like there were a few.
Correct. So I do think that's kind of like something to consider. It will be interesting to see how that changes because, and on to the very last little piece, which is not news as far as I'm concerned. Just have to share it. They're supposedly pulling back on content again. We heard this once before. Did they do it? No. So I don't even have words to go on about that. I don't need to. It's just kind of a current update. But we will kind of see how that also plays into this supposed like drawback on content. I honestly don't care how much content you put out as long as it's good.
Yeah. The number doesn't bother me. Quality over quantity any day.
So good.
Yeah. And they actually ripped out 4 shows and 4 movies.
Exactly.
So.
And was it hard on us a little bit as a very baby podcast? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't cover WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier. No, we didn't cover those 2.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't really been a podcast yet. But we still covered the whole second half of the year. And so like to sit there, I mean, it was enjoyable. It was a good time. It was good content. So I do think like I don't care as long as the stories are genuinely good and I'm enjoying them.
Yeah. And that right there is the thesis of this episode.
Correct.
Just make good content. Period. The end.
Exactly.
Signed, the fans. On that note, we are going to call it on this kind of overall studio update related to everything Marvel, because there was a lot to talk about and a lot to theorize about what the heck they're doing over there. More to come, I'm sure, in all of our Sister Scoops episodes. But you can follow us on your podcast platform of choice. Sister Scoop goes up on YouTube, so make sure to follow us and give us a subscribe over there. Our website is a good resource for all things related to the show. And if you're enjoying the content that we're putting out, you can support our show through our Buy Me a Coffee link, which is in our show notes.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes as well. And next week, we will have another podcast episode. We're not quite sure what it's going to be on yet, but make sure you guys are joining us for that because it's our last week until we start our Ironheart saga, if you will. So we're very excited for that. But in the meantime, we do not have a current topic. Just keep an eye out. It's going to be a good one either way. But as always, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.